Now, Stephanie, you've heard about the needs of who is customers. Now you're representing the data subjects whose data is publicized in who is. And I should maybe clarify for everyone that GDPR is about the data of natural persons. But that even when you have the field of company name, that can become personal data if reference can be made to a natural person. So it can basically affect an awful lot of data that's currently being publicized. So my question to you is, how do data subjects think about who is and GDPR? And let's just assume this community does not manage to come up with a solution by May 18. How are you going to react?
Stephanie Perrin, for the record. Thank you very much. I am here representing the non-commercial stakeholders group. And the non-commercial stakeholders group has, from the outset of this discussion, and I would date that back to about 2000, been arguing for the respect for data protection law within ICANN. But we also, as Thomas pointed out, we represent the end users, and that includes non-commercial users. Non-commercial users would include very small business that are not corporations. It would include religious organizations. It would include free speech organizations, journalists, women's health networks, all kinds of groups that whose rights and human rights are very much jeopardized by an open WHOIS, where they are being persecuted for whatever they're doing, but who may not have protection under data protection law. Their employees might. These are complex issues that have to be sorted out at a regional level. So we take the view that we protect them both. Now, this discussion is about GDPR, but I would just like to interject by way of background that I feel my colleague's pain. I became a data protection officer for the Department of Communications in Canada in 1984. So my skin is extremely thick. I've been working on data protection issues ever since. It's not popular, but I was stunned when I came to ICANN in 2013 as a member of the experts working group at the low level of the debate here. And I was familiar with it because when I worked in the Privacy Commissioner's office in Canada in 2005, I participated in a WHOIS workshop. I believe it was Vancouver. And we prepared a statement, and the commissioner sent a letter. And sadly, we didn't seem to have progressed very far from 2005 to 2013. And in 2017, we are now doing a massive catch-up. And I regard this as a really critical failure to address a risk, because not much has changed. The GDPR is one more step in a logical process of harmonizing data protection law and ensuring that there is good compliance. This was the next step, that there would be harmonized compliance in Europe and that there might be fines. So this was foreseen by just about everybody. So I think this is an accountability issue for ICANN that they need to address. Now, that's probably enough on that subject. In terms of framing the debate, as I said, it's binary, it's disrespectful, and it is not making concrete progress on issues that we all care about. I'm on the current RDS group, and I find it, as I said yesterday, I think Chuck Gomes, who's chairing it, deserves another Ethos Award, because it requires patience to try to make progress. This is nonsense. We need to find solutions. We certainly, in the non-commercial users group, are not trying to facilitate crime. We are trying to facilitate accountable access to personal information and to commercial confidential information in a way that will not jeopardize end users. And the fact that we are still operating, firstly, most of the debate is about continuing third-party access to data as a purpose for the WHOIS. That is backwards. The purpose of who is and the purpose of gathering registration data and enforcing that in contracts ought to be linked to ICANN's mission. And ICANN's mission, while we understand the slogan is one world, one internet, that does not mean that the entire world should see who has a domain name, and that they should have access to their personal information, their phone number, and their address. This is disproportionate. So, how do we move to tiered access in a way that respects end user rights and facilitates speedy access? We know that domain abuse happens within a very critical first few hours of the registration of names. If we could stop fighting about whether GDPR is a good law or whether data protection will stop the internet and get down to figuring out how to do rapid access for accredited parties, we would be making some progress. And frankly, I have moved on to thinking about that because nobody's listening anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and come up with some solutions. And if I may, do I have another minute to talk about solutions? I really think that we should think about accrediting the users who get access to this third-party data and figuring out in some other way that is a little more nuanced than having personal versus commercial. As I say, we represent end users. In the kind of economy that we are seeing in an internet-based world, there will be many, many people working from their homes. We will be fighting for those people's rights. They are not corporations such as Facebook. They are not on the same plane. They're entitled to protection. If they have an idea and they come up with a domain name that they are going to use for their idea, they're entitled to commercial protection without hiring a big lawyer to hide behind. So let's be clear. We have to have a nuanced scale here. In terms of fighting the abuse, absent a regulatory framework that would figure out who has access, then I think we have to go to standards. The only standards I can think of are quality standards that would apply in this situation. They would mesh with quality standards for data protection and for security, the other security standards in the ISO stream. If someone has a better idea, please talk to me, because that's what we're working on. But please, ICANN has an accountability crisis here. The fact that they have ignored the data commissioners for 17 years and are now only paying attention because there's a 4% fine. I'm summarizing to be brief here. That doesn't augur well from an accountability perspective. Respect for law is fundamental. This is not new. There are 120 data protection laws around the world. They all follow the European model, more or less. And they will be following the GDPR model shortly. So it's time to get down to work. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Stephanie. Now I will turn to Ralf now. And just based on what Stephanie said,